everyone! Today we will be learning about for loops in Python, and also I made a notebook for you if you are stuck on this topic, and if you can't find it, don't worry, the link will be in the comments below, okay? So let's go ahead and hop onto our Jupyter notebook. Okay, so here's my Jupyter notebook, and first I'm going to start off by explaining what a for loop is. Okay, so a for loop is like an iterator in Python. So what an iterator does, it goes through the items that are in like a string or a list or a tuple and even a dictionary. Okay, so even a dictionary. So what I mean by item is each value. So like a list, there are elements, so that would count as a value in a for loop, and like in a string there are letters, so that would count as a value in a for loop. So here is the actual general format of a for loop in Python. So obviously we are going to start with for. So like a while loop, you start with for. So and then you put a variable, so a random variable. It doesn't matter if it has been mentioned or not. So it can't be mentioned, okay? So it does matter if it has been mentioned or not, okay? And then you put your variable that you want to iterate through. So you want to put the variable of your string, list, tuple, or dictionary that you want to iterate through. And then for each element or letter or item in that list, dictionary, or tuple or string, then you need to provide an operation for it, okay? So let's go through a very simple example, and this example will iterate through a list, okay? So this one will be really easy. So first we need to start by defining the list, otherwise you won't have one to define. So I'm going to say list1 is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so this is my list over here, and I'm now going to use the for loop. So for, and as you can see, it comes in nice green highlighting here to show you that it is a for loop. And I'm going to define another variable called num. So for each number in list1, then for each number in list1, you put a colon, save as a while loop. I want to print num. Okay, so don't worry if you don't understand any of this, just follow along with me, do the examples, and I will explain all of it at the end. Okay, so list1 is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to the end. And for each number in our list1, so num, short for number, I want to print each number. So let me show you what the output will look like. It comes in a column, so there is one number on each row. So what our Python interpreter has done, it has taken each element from our list, so number in this case, and printed it out one on each row, so it is very clear. So this is what iterating is in Python. So now we've done quite this simple example. You can go ahead and try a bit more if you don't understand, but don't worry. I'm now going to go on to a little bit more trickier example, and this one will print out the even numbers. So print out the even numbers. Okay, so first I'm just going to use list1 from the start, and I'm directly going to go like for num, so I'm using for num in list1, so for every number in list1. If, so I'm going to put an if statement in a for loop, just like putting a an if statement in a while loop. So if the number mod 2, so if the number mod 2 equals 0, it would be an even number, because if a number divided by 2 is can be divided by 2 without a remainder, so a remainder of 0, then obviously it's an even number. So if the number mod 2 is equal to 0, then I'm just going to print the number down. So now you'll see what the output will look like. There we go. It has only printed out all the even numbers from our list of odd and even numbers. Okay. So now I'm going to replace each odd number with a phrase of words. Okay, with a phrase of words. Okay, so again, I'm going to say for num in list 1, then if num mod 2 is equal to 0, print num. Okay, so same as before. And also, I just want to tell you something. In a for loop, an if statement, you have an if statement, an else statement is optional. You don't have to. But now I will add an else statement. So else. So if the number is not even, print odd number. Okay, so I'm going to replace every odd number with the phrase odd number. Okay, so 1 is an odd number in our list 1, so it replaced it with odd number. 3 is an odd number in list 1, so it replaced that with odd number. Okay, so as you can see, else statement is optional in an if statement if it's in a for or while loop. So now we have done this, we are going to create another one that's related to that will calculate some math for us. Okay, so again, I'm going to use list 1, and this one will sum up all elements in list 1. Okay, so it won't be that hard if you think it will, because don't worry, a for loop it always iterates through each value, so it won't be that hard. So obviously we need to write down 4. So for num in list 1, I'm just going to use the same variable. For each number in list 1, and then list sum. Okay, so I need to define a variable called list sum. So I'm going to say list sum is equal to 0. So I'm going to set it to 0 now because we haven't defined the operation that adds the numbers together. So list sum equals list sum plus num. So what I'm trying to say here is list sum, so 0 plus the first number because it would iterate it through in order. So list sum is 0, so 0 plus 1 is 1, and that will be set to list sum again. And then if list sum is 1, then it will add the second iterated element, so 2, and that will become 3, and list sum will be set to 3. Okay, so for every number in list 1, list sum equals list sum plus num. Okay, so I want to print out the list sum. Okay, so print, let me just put this together. Print list sum. Okay, so I need to just move this over, and there we go. It gave me the whole. The reason I had to move this over is because if it was part of this whole for loop, then it would have iterated through every sum of each number, and that is not what we wanted. So all we wanted was the sum of all of the elements in list 1. So we just had to move this over, so remove the indent, and there you go, it gave us the sum of all numbers. Okay, Okay, so on to our next example. Instead of using lists, we are going to iterate over each letter in a string. Okay, so instead of lists, we are going to use strings. Now, you don't always need to define you don't always need to store a string in a variable. You can just say it directly in the for loop. So I can say for letter in this is a string. Okay, so you don't need to use a variable to define a string. You can literally just use a string from the top of your head and put it here if you don't want to define a variable. You can do that with lists as well. Okay, so it doesn't matter. So for each letter in this is a string, then I want to print letter. So I'm going to print the letters. And there you go, iterated. So it put each letter on a new line. So this is a string. Okay. So as I told you before, our Python interpreter iterates through each letter in a string. And if you ask it to print the letter, it will print each letter on a new line. Okay. So now we have used a for loop with a string. We will now use it on a tuple. So let's see how far we can get. Okay, so let's see how far we can get if we use a for loop with a tuple. So I'm going to say tup, so short for tuple, is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so quick note, remember that tuples have normal brackets, no square brackets. So for element in tup. Okay, so instead of writing element, you can put just a random letter. So you can just put T. But I'm going to put element so it's more clear. So for element in tup, I want to print each element. Okay, so let's see what we get. We get 1, 2, 3, 4. So same as the list, except so it's exactly the same as the list. Okay. So there's no difference. Okay, so now let's look at how we can use for loops with a dictionary. We've used it with lists and strings and tuples. So let's see how we can use it with dictionaries. Okay, so I'm going to define a dictionary called D. So D is equal to say K1 is equal to 1 and then comma. K2 is equal to 2, and K3 is equal to 3. Okay, so I've got my dictionary with my 3 keys, and then I'm going to use a for loop. So for item, because this is an item, one whole item, for item, actually, it doesn't really matter if you put item, but I'm just going to say that to make it more clearer. So for item in D, I want to print each item. So what our for loop will iterate through, it will be will be the keys, okay? Because that is the first thing that it saw. So instead of iterating through each item, it will iterate through each key. Okay. So instead, you could say for KV. So our Python interpreter will automatically understand that as key and value. So KV. And there it's go. It just gives it like that. Okay. So it doesn't make a difference. It just gives it like that. Okay. Okay, so one last example, and then I will explain everything all over again. Okay, so remember, dictionaries are unordered, so it doesn't matter what order you put the keys in. Okay, so you can obtain a sorted list using sorted. So this doesn't include a for loop, but it is advised if you're learning for loops, okay? So I'm going to say sorted and then d dot values. And if I run this, it says 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's not. It's just something useful you need to know when you're learning for loops because they will come quite in handy if you are using for loops. Okay, so now I am going to explain over everything we have learned so far. So we have learned that the general format is you put for first, and then you put a variable that you want to assign for each element, character, letter, or key or value. So for every item or element, so what I just said right now, in that particular list, tuple, or string, or dictionary, and so for every element or something in that dictionary, string, or tuple, then you need to provide a statement to do something to each of those letters. So the first one was to iterate through a list. So for every element, okay, so in our case it's a number. So for every element in list 1, so that's how you can think this bit like think this bit as I want to print every number, so print every num in list 1. Okay, so this was our first example. It was very simple, it wasn't that hard, but then we got onto example where we had to print out all the even numbers. So again, so for every element in list 1, well, in our case number, so if the number, so let me just comment that out. So if the num divided by 2 gave a remainder of 0, if it gave a remainder of 0, sorry, let me just fix this is going bonkers a bit. So if the number divided by 2 and gave a remainder of 0, then I wanted to print the nums that gave a remainder of 0 when divided by 2. Okay, so if the number divided by 2 gave a remainder of 0, I wanted to print only those numbers. So it gave me the numbers that were even, because this operation over here calculated if the value was even or not. And in this one, we use the same operation over here, except we added an else statement. Okay, so we added an else statement, and we replaced odd numbers with a phrase. Okay, so look at these comments, understand it, or you can do a bit more examples. Okay, so what we did here, we calculated it for even or not. So if it wasn't even, we wanted to replace the odd number with the phrase odd number. Okay, and it worked because 1 is an odd number and it got replaced with odd number, and 3 is an odd number and it got replaced with odd number. Okay, so on to our next example. What we did here is we summed up all the values in a list. So our list sum was set to 0 because we because we didn't add up anything yet. So because we didn't add up anything yet, because it will add up something when this for loop is run. So for each number in list 1, so if you want to write it shorter, we could say list num plus equals num. Okay, so again, what I'm trying to say here is list sum plus list plus num, is equal to list num. Okay, so you can write it a bit in a more slicker form if you like, and this is that form. So let's run it and see if it works. So it's not list num, it's list sum. Getting confused with the nums and sums, sorry. If I run this, it still works because we wrote it slicker. And we moved the print statement here. Otherwise, it would have iterated through every sum, and that isn't what we wanted. We just wanted the sum of all of the numbers in list 1. And after that, we iterated through every letter in this is a string. So what we did for every letter, in the given string. Okay, so you can write it like that if you want. So it's optional to put the variable, or you can just put the string or list directly. And so I wanted to print each letter that it iterated through row by row, so I just had to write down print letter. Now, after we explored iterating through tuples, and it was exactly the same as lists, so no explanation for that because we did it before, and we iterated through dictionaries as well. So let me change this to item again. So we learned that it only iterated through every key. Okay, so only iterated through keys. Okay, and after that, we just learned a nice technique that would give a sorted list of all the values in a dictionary. So you don't always need to put d dot values. You can put d dot keys, and it would still work. You could put d dot items. Let's see. Yes, that would work as well, because K1, K2, and K3, and 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so that's it for today. And if you are still stuck, you can go ahead and check the notebook. It will be linked in the comments below, as I said at the start. And I guess that's it. Bye.